Welcome to this week's edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. They say that if you want to get far, you can get farther if you know how to wear more than one hat. They call it a talent stack, and this week's guest certainly has the stack of talents to talk about. We'll be exploring what his secrets are and what he puts into his sauce, maybe, in this week's edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report, which as always is brought to you by...
Each week, our community makes history. Each week, you make history. And each week, there's only one source to turn to for the first take on history. You know what that is? Subscribe to the Sentinel right now to discover the history being made in your own backyard. And then in Honey Falls, Lima Sentinel. More than just your news, it's your history. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. Join us each episode as we discuss fantastic topics ranging from history to science to the strange and the wonderful, as well as the treasured spirit with which our region has infused America. We challenge you to consider all things Greater Western New York, from our region's very beginnings to how it inspires, how it empowers, and why it is so admired. Here's the host of the State of Greater Western New York Report, Chris Carosa.
Hi there, and welcome to this week's edition of the State of Greater Western New York Report. I'm Chris Carosa, as the man said. And with me this week is Paul Guglielmo. And Paul's done a lot of things. So Paul, let's just start off. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. It is an honor. It's very cool to be here. I was born and raised in Northeast Ohio. I knew nothing about Western New York, but I got into radio, actually. And in radio, there was a company called Clear Channel Radio that I worked for in Ohio that decided they were going to sell the cluster of radio stations where I worked. So I found out that they were going to be letting all the employees go. Everyone was being laid off. And I was the very first person they called into the office that day after that announcement. And when they called me in, they asked me if I would be interested, instead of staying with the company, but transferring to a city called Rochester, New York. And I said, New York City sounds great. Never heard of Rochester. I called my mom. I told her, I'm going to New York City. She says, where? I said, Rochester. She says, you might want to look at a map. That's near Buffalo. I said, that's impossible. There's nothing near Buffalo. Then I came here thinking for sure that it would be 6 months and on to a major market for me, right? Turns out, one, I wasn't that good. And two, I fell in love with this area. I actually think Western New York is fantastic. I never want to leave. I couldn't believe it. When I got here, it's got everything. It's got cities, it's got rural, it's got farms. Most of all, as we'll talk about today, it's got support for entrepreneurship, for small business. And I think that was the thing that really attracted me at the beginning, was this area is full of innovation in a million different fields. And I said, I want to be part of that. So that was kind of the winding road that eventually got me where we are today.
And exactly where are you today? You've got a lot of activity in the background. It looks like you're in a warehouse. What is that, and why might people recognize what it produces?
So I'm coming to you today from something called Craft Cannery in Bergen, New York. Bergen is kind of between Rochester and Buffalo, a little closer to Rochester than Buffalo. And Craft Cannery is the name of our business, where we do what's called co-packing, contract manufacturing. Long story short, if you have a great recipe or something that you make, a dressing, sauce, marinade, something like that, we can make your recipe for you so that you can sell it in grocery store shelves. We do all the compliance portion, food safety, all the stuff that you're worried about, or that you're thinking like, boy, well, I don't want to, what license do I have to have? Who has to grant me permission to do this? That's the stuff we do for you. Plus, we actually make the product for you, the actual manufacturing. So that's what Craft Cannery is, and yeah, it's been about 3 years since we've been here, and we're slowly but surely building ourselves up.
Now, recently you've won several awards. Tell us a little about that, but also tell us about the award that you didn't win, because you told me earlier that you learned a lot from that experience.
Well, first of all, I was recently voted GQ Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive. That's breaking news. That just came out. I'm just kidding. That didn't actually happen. That's in my fan. I think I had that dream last night. Yeah. So, all right. We recently won an award called Grow New York. Although I don't know if I would say we won. We were second place, which means we were actually the first loser. Now, second place came with a $500,000 prize in the way of grant money for business development. So, I mean, if you're going to lose and get $500,000, that's the place to lose, right? That being said, second out of 390 total businesses, it's not bad. I was pretty proud of that.
Now, your what products does that really pertain to? Those are your in-house products, right? Or do they help you do some of the private labeling? I think whatever it is you call it,
Yeah.
to help other people do their products.
Yeah, exactly. So just a quick 101 on what this is. So private labeling is we have a recipe already and you have a brand. Say you own a grocery store and you just want to offer a barbecue sauce with your brand on it. That's private labeling. Co-packing is you have a recipe and you want us to make your recipe. That's co-packing. So two different things. The award, the Grow New York Award, actually was as it pertains to the manufacturing business. So it wasn't connected to any one particular brand. The big pitch for us was we're a small co-packer and we come with essentially no minimums. And if you have a dollar and a dream and you just want to get started and you want to launch a product, we're a place where you can do that. And that's not typical for co-packers. A lot of co-packers have larger minimums. And the reason we won the award was because it was an award to help fund an entrepreneur or a startup business. And the award, by awarding us money, it was really funding many businesses because the better we can do, the better we can do for dozens and dozens of other entrepreneurs. So that was kind of the way I went into it. Was I tried to pitch it to them as when you fund Craft Cannery, you don't just fund one business, you fund dozens of entrepreneurs.
So, who are some of these entrepreneurs? Are you allowed to tell who they are, and maybe what markets they go into? It's I'm looking for maybe something that people within the Greater West New York region would recognize.
Yeah, so we do private label for Wegmans. That's the big one that you would know if you're in Western New York. Private label meaning we make a product on their behalf. It's their product, but we make it on their behalf. There are also plenty of local businesses. The problem is there are confidentiality agreements in place, but there's a few I can talk about. Sticky Lips Barbecue, if you're in Rochester. Guglielmo Sauce. Salsa Cuse for somebody in Syracuse might recognize that one. I believe, can I mention your uncle? Am I allowed to say that? Is that okay?
You can say whatever you want as long as he's okay with it.
I don't know if he's not okay, then we're both in trouble. I
Look,
guess.
he's a guy who likes his name mentioned. So go ahead. He's really good on the air. Tell people about him.
Salvatore Specialty Foods out of I guess Buffalo, kind of, but Salvatore Specialty Foods does wonderful pizza sauces and pasta sauces, and we're proud to manufacture on their behalf as well. So many local brands. The thing about I mentioned we're a small co-packer, which is great, but because we're a small co-packer, you know, it's really limited to local or regional brands. You're not going to see any national brands made at our place.
So I should add, just in terms of disclosure, we did interview Salvatore Bucher, who is my uncle, last year. He offers these sauces through his trailer, Salvatore Specialty Foods, and we interviewed him at the Erie County Fair, where his trailer has been for over 60 years. Of course, he's not quite that old, so it was actually his parents' trailer to start with. In fact, I think he was born the first year they got there, but that's another story. So, Paul, is it just sauces and a variety of sauces, or do you do other things?
Just sauces. We do sauces, dressings, marinades, things like that. The way I like to say is we do liquids in a bottle, but not carbonated beverages or alcohol. So pasta sauce, barbecue sauce, salad dressing, any type of glaze or marinade, those are big things for us as well. Wing sauces, hot sauces. Of course, specific to Western New York, you have the Rochester style meat sauce. We do a bunch of that as well. If you're going to have a garbage plate, right? So liquids in bottles, really. Think of it that way. The stuff that goes in your fridge and sits there for a few months. Hopefully not for a few months. We need you to go through those condiments as fast as you possibly can.
You mentioned garbage plates. So do restaurants serve these sauces?
Yeah, so that's the thing is we as a co-packer, we'll do it in glass jars. You go to a grocery store and you can buy that product, right? But beyond that, on top of that, we also do food service packaging. So if you happen to own a restaurant and you look every single morning, you get into work and you realize, man, I've got a couple of people spending a couple of hours every day making these sauces. We can do bulk packaging for you. And the way that that helps is now you can save on that labor. Your sauces, your proprietary formulas show up right at your back door at your restaurant, and it can really streamline your process for you. So that's been another thing that we've gotten into. We do like gallon jugs, pouches, pails, 5-gallon buckets, things like that.
So we had a question here from somebody in the audience. They wanted to know specifically the Guglielmo sauce. Where can somebody get that? Are you allowed to sell it side by side to the competing Wegmans product? Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah. So Guglielmo's is in Wegmans. Yeah, you can get that in Wegmans. Yeah,
Any
that's
other
mine.
places?
So yeah, lots of mom and pops, mostly Rochester, little Syracuse, little Buffalo as far as the mom and pops. I'll give you like if you're in Syracuse, off the top of my head, there's a place called Nichols Supermarket in Liverpool. If you're in Buffalo, off the top of my head, there's a place called Buffalo Artisan Food Traders. Also, Farmers and Artisans. Whole Foods in Buffalo. That's probably the easiest to remember. Dash's Market in Buffalo also would have it. And the Guglielmo's, just to go back to the original story, was actually the predecessor of Craft Cannery. That was how I got started in this world to begin with, was bottling our own family pasta sauces called Guglielmo's. And so there's a brand out there that you can get in all the stores we just discussed that is actually named after my grandfather, Guglielmo's.
Very interesting. Yeah. So let's go back. That's not me. That's not you. That's me. Let's go back to the idea of Guglielmo sauce. What's interesting with this is what started it, right? So this is how you got into the business. And at that point, was it just marketed very locally? I mean, you said you were from Northeast Ohio or Central Ohio. So was it an Ohio sauce, or did it start here? Did your family follow you here? How did that work?
Started here. I came alone. I came for the job, and I missed home, and I started doing the sauce as a hobby on the side. Really, it was something I did kind of as a gift for my grandfather. It was like a Christmas present for him to see his name on a bottle of sauce, because I grew up every Sunday going to Grandpa's house for sauce. And I started it here, and it started very small. The very first day of business for us was me standing under a 10 by 10 tent that I got from Dick's Sporting Goods at a place called the Riesling Wine Festival in Canandaigua, New York, with 15 cases of sauce. My mother, father, cousin, actually 2 cousins and an aunt all came to help me stand there and sell these 15 cases of sauce. And that was day one. We built from that day. I remember driving that day with 15 cases of sauce in my trunk thinking, who's going to take this? It's going to sit in my basement for the next 2 decades.
Classic. Little side hustle. Were you still working on the radio at that point, or?
Oh, yeah. I worked on the radio for the first 6 years of the business, but I worked in morning radio, which is, because I know you're a radio guy. Morning radio means I was at work at 3:30 every morning, by 3:30 every morning. Now, the positive on that is I was out of work by noon every single day. So I had all day to drive around and walk into stores and try to sell sauce.
Yeah. I should add, when I started at the very, very beginning, I was on the graveyard shift. So that meant that I was in even earlier than you. Now, I got out earlier, but I hated it because you had to work at night. Who likes to work at night? Speaking of work, let's go to a break here. And when we come back, I think, Paul, let's explore some of your, say, travels. And I don't necessarily mean physical travels, but maybe your marketing travels in and about the greater Western New York region. Let's break for a commercial. We'll be right back.
Through the mists of time, nature and man have both created and buried treasures beyond the imagination. With the ages, these riches slowly dissolve into mere myths until they are forever forgotten. But there are those brave souls who tirelessly cling to the truth, ever seeking to discover the undiscovered, to reveal what has always been there, to uncover the hidden gems of a land thought forsaken but loved by millions. "50 Hidden Gems of Greater Western New York." Discover the secrets in your own backyard. Buy your copy now at 50hiddengems.com.
Welcome back. I'm Chris Carosa with Paul Guglielmo, who's the owner of the Craft Cannery. And Paul, you started working around the Rochester area for your own business, but since then you've expanded to bring in other businesses that you're doing work with. Tell us a little bit about how these businesses are going about maybe marketing their goods to the local areas. What are they doing, and what are some tips maybe you can share with other small businesses, not necessarily food businesses, that you learned from this experience?
It's all about the demo. We have something in this business we call a demo. You know exactly what that is. It's when you walk into the grocery store and there's somebody standing at a little table with free samples of something. That's how you do it. When you start a brand, the single hardest thing is to get anybody to break their habit. There's really two things that make people buy things. There's familiarity with the product, and then beyond the familiarity with the product, there's price. Maybe it's a price point that they like. So familiarity can be an issue, especially if you're going to be a local artisan kind of high-end product. Like our pasta sauce launched at $6 a jar. Now, some people don't bat an eye. They say, oh, that looks great. Other people say, oh, $6 a jar? Boy, it better be pretty good sauce if I'm going to spend $6 a jar. So the only way really to convince them is to give them a free sample. Meet them, talk to them, shake their hand, tell them about Grandpa, tell them about the recipe, what's in the sauce. Let them see the fact that I've got a tattoo. I've got tomatoes tattooed on my forearm, and that goes for any of these brand owners, anybody who we make anything for. Show them the authenticity behind that recipe and why it's a high-end thing. Give them a little sample, meet them, shake their hand, and be kind to them. And that's how you really convert. That's how you get people to try your stuff. And then do it store after store. You wish you could do that just once and that would be good enough? No. Every store, every little nook and cranny of Western New York, you got to get all over the place.
Now, are there any sort of differences from the various nooks and crannies of the greater Western New York region that you've noticed, and maybe how people shop or how people talk about their products?
Oh, sure. I mean, we already brought up the Rochester style meat sauce, the garbage plate sauce. Let's take that for example. Rochester style meat sauce is massively popular in Rochester. Even within just Western New York, you can see a little bubble around Rochester where that Rochester style meat sauce goes. Brands have had a hard time breaking in just to Buffalo or Syracuse from Rochester with that Rochester style meat sauce. It is so intensely regional. Actually, regional is not even the word. It's so intensely local that it just gangbusters in Rochester, but a geographical barrier kind of stopping it from growing beyond that. And that's a puzzle that we've been trying to solve for years, is how can a Rochester style meat sauce kind of expand beyond just the Rochester area. And do you call it something else? Do you call it sloppy Joe sauce or something? It's kind of similar, but it's not really the same thing. What do you do? So that's something where there can be differences even just within this region. Then there's also areas of this region where price point matters a little more than others, right? We don't need to name names, but there's places where a $6 jar of sauce is not a big deal, and places where a $6 jar of sauce is a very expensive jar of sauce. So you see a little bit of that as well.
So what I'm hearing, at least on the first part, is it's easier to sell to a much smaller niche. But when you start expanding it, then you're going to have to do different things. Actually, this is a problem that all businesses have. If you think about it, you're very successful within this one realm, within this small group of customers. And obviously you want to grow. But to grow, you kind of have to change your product, and you risk alienating your original customer base. Have you seen that too? And maybe what can be done about that?
I don't know that I've ever seen anyone like truly alienate their customer base, but I definitely have seen people constantly trying to crack the code on growth. I mean, we're doing it, right? Everybody's trying to crack the code on growth. What's the thing that's going to put me over the hump to get me over? And changing the product is touchy. That's tough because if you change the product, and that does happen. I mean, reformulations do happen. Occasionally, things need tweaked. We saw it a lot in the pandemic when there were certain ingredients maybe you couldn't get your hands on, where somebody would have to go to a sub or a second-hand ingredient. Um, but the code of growth is the tough code to crack. And what it comes down to a lot, which is unfortunate, is money. It comes down to marketing money, resources. Can you actually go into a new market? Let's say you're in Rochester, you're super successful, and you decide, I want to go to Albany, I want to be super successful in Albany. Great. Go to Albany and do all those demos. It's going to take time. You know, you're going to put all those miles on your car, or you're going to need to get hotel rooms, rental cars, places to stay, all the product that you're going to be giving away. There's a cost associated with growth, and it is very difficult.
You know, I think your business model actually is a good example of how to grow without necessarily changing the process. So you did a little bit of a pivot. You have this Guglielmo sauce, and that's your main product, or at least that was your flagship product. Rather than change that product, you started marketing the process that you use to create that product, and you became sort of a back office for other sauce makers, and that allowed you to expand. In a sense, I mean, you don't have to give us specifics, but can you tell us maybe in terms of magnitude how that has allowed you to grow?
You called it. I don't talk about that part that often, but you called it. That's exactly right. Um, it was what was going to happen next. I was ready to leave radio, so I was ready to leave my regular corporate job, and it was, what do we do? Do we expand Guglielmo's just the way we just talked about? It's hard. It's expensive. Do we find another way to expand the business? And the other way ended up being manufacturing. But we considered distribution. We considered opening a restaurant, right? Like, we considered a few different options for how to take that to the next level without having to geographically grow. The other thing is, married with a child. I don't want to spend all kinds of time out of town. So I was already getting a ton of phone calls and emails from aspiring entrepreneurs or existing entrepreneurs wanting to know, how do I grow my little barbecue sauce business or whatever it might be. And I said, there might be a way to monetize this idea of being a resource for other local sauce people, and also actually making it for them. So I decided to try to expand. And yeah, in my head, it was exactly what you said, Chris. It was, can I expand my business in a way that if somebody's making something locally, it doesn't sound good for me to put it this way, like we get a piece of that. We're putting in the work, we're bringing value to it. So it's not a great way to word that, but it was kind of what was going through my head as far as, how do you actually expand and make your bigger? And it's really great. And we're not the only ones who do what we do. There's other small co-packers around, but there's a lot of business to go around for small co-packing.
You made me laugh when you were kind of reluctant to say you get a piece of the pie, or whatever, because
it doesn't sound good. Yeah,
I was going to say the title of one of my books is "A Pizza, the Action." And it is about working at my grandparents' pizza stand that ultimately became my uncle's, and how I learned about business just by working there. And so it is really, I think that, and I have this same sort of problem with business where, sometimes I'm actually afraid to charge money for services that I provide, just because, for whatever reasons. But there's something that kind of holds you back, where you think that, I shouldn't ask for a piece of the pie, like you say. But really what it is, and this is how I overcome it, you're creating a win-win scenario. Win for you, a win for them. And as long as you continue to make somebody else win, then there's no problem with you winning there too. Paul, we're just about out of time here, but we have just checking to see if there's any more questions. Not really. If you were going to be talking to somebody who's just starting a business, again, not necessarily in the business that you do, but any kind of business, what kind of advice would you give them?
Boots on the ground. First of all, just start. Somebody will sit around and they will think about it forever. Take the first step. Whatever the first step might be, apply for the license. As soon as you spend some money, now you get skin in the game. So apply for that $75 license to become a sole proprietor or something. Like, just take the first step and make that part happen. Now it will become real. And again, if you could spend a little money, good. You might think, well, you mean spend a little money is good? No, because now you get skin in the game and it will motivate you to continue. Step two, perseverance. People have no idea how difficult it is to be successful, and people have no idea how much failure is involved with success. I mean, we in general have been successful here at Craft Cannery, but we probably have 3 failures a day. Something goes wrong all the time. Failure is just part of the success story. So don't let that little first piece of failure hurt you or stop you. And then the last thing I would say is, at the very beginning, keep your cost as low as you can. Do as much as you can yourself.
Oh, you reminded me for some reason, your podcast. We didn't talk too much about your podcast. So tell us a little bit about that and tell people how they can hear you on your podcast.
It's called Paulie Guglielmo Show. It comes out every Sunday. And if you listen to this episode we just put out on Sunday, speaking of perseverance, I just interviewed these entrepreneurs who created a different lid for like pasta sauce jars. And it took them 8 years to get a working prototype. These guys went 8 years before they even had something they could sell. That is perseverance. A lot of entrepreneurship, behind the scenes, small business talk on that podcast. Paulie, you can see how it's spelled on the screen there. It's just, if you type that into Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast, you'll find it.
And that's every Sunday. What time?
Sunday, 8 a.m. It comes out at 8 a.m., but it's not, you don't have to tune in right at 8 a.m. It's the new episode comes out. You listen whenever you want.
Right, yeah. So you're free to listen. So just type in Paul's name and you can find his episode. Do you regularly talk about business things, or is it an eclectic sort of thing?
I regularly. I regularly talk about, like, just what the struggles of the week were, what the successes were. If something goes particularly well or particularly poorly, I give the behind the scenes on how it went. I love that kind of stuff. I think it's great for people to hear that things aren't always rosy, because what tends to happen is people look on the outside looking in, always tend to look at businesses and just think, must be nice. It's like, must be nice, own the business. I like to kind of show, like, well, it's not. It is nice. I'm not gonna say it's not nice, but it comes with a lot of, as we said before, there's a lot of failure involved with success.
That's right. And with that, we are about at the end of our show. So I want to thank you, Paul, for being a part of this, and thank you, listeners, for viewers, whatever you want to call yourselves, for watching this. If you want to be a member of the live audience, go to this link below, stateof.greaterwesternewyork.com. Sign up for free. Every Thursday morning, you'll get a free invitation, and you'll be able to participate in the show, and that's the only way that you can ask the guests questions live. If you can't see it live, if you can't attend live, then it's available anytime you want to see it on our website, stateof.greaterwesternewyork.com. Or if you follow our Facebook page or YouTube channel, like our Facebook page, and join or subscribe to our YouTube channel, every Sunday at 1:30, it's rebroadcast there. So with that, I want to say thank you, Paul. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye for now.